ladies and gentlemen. Winners, losers, hustlers, dreamers. Let me ask you a question straight off the bat. Let me break something down for you because most people don't even realize how trapped they are. See, when I say money buys freedom, I'm not talking about buying Ferraris or flying private just to flex. I'm talking about something far more powerful. I'm talking about time, the ability to own your time, to command your day, to wake up and say, what do I want to do today? Instead of asking, what do I have to do today? You feel the difference? Most people don't live. They exist. They wake up to an alarm they didn't choose, to go to a job they don't like, to serve someone they don't respect, just to get a paycheck that barely covers rent and a microwave dinner. And then they rinse and repeat every single day until they're too old to enjoy anything they sacrificed their life for. That's not freedom. That's a slow death with Wi-Fi. Time is the most valuable asset on earth. You can lose money and get it back. You can lose things and replace them. But once time is gone, it's gone. The clock doesn't care about your excuses. It doesn't pause because you're tired or broke or waiting for the right moment. Every second that passes is one you'll never get again. That's why rich people fight for control over their time. Because when you control your time, you control your life. Ask yourself this: if someone else owns your time, do you really own anything? You don't. You're not free if you can't decide what your day looks like. If you can't say no to a meeting or yes to a trip, or if you need permission to take a break, then you're still in chains. Golden chains, maybe. If you've got a nice office and a decent car, but chains all the same. It's polished slavery. And here's where it gets even more real. Your time isn't just being taken, it's being sold. Someone is buying your hours for a discount and selling the result for profit. They've done the math. They know what your time is worth to them. The question is, most of you are underpricing your existence. You're trading 5 days of your life for 2 days of rest, and somehow calling that balance. You're giving up your Monday to Friday just to squeeze in a little fun on the weekend when you're already exhausted. That's not living. That's surviving. Now, I'm not saying this to mock you. I'm saying this because I used to be there. I know what it's like to be at the mercy of someone else's schedule. But the day you realize that money isn't just about luxury, it's about leverage, that's the day everything changes. Money gives you choices, and choices give you power. Real power. Not fantasy power. Not likes on Instagram power. I mean the power to shape your reality, to wake up and train in the middle of the day, to work on a business you own, not slave for one you, to spend time with your family without begging for time off. That's real wealth. That's real freedom. Some people say, well, not everyone can be rich. Cool, but everyone can take steps to own more of their time. Everyone can learn skills that the market pays for. Everyone can wake up earlier, cut distractions, eliminate excuses, and start building something. Every hour you waste scrolling, complaining, or doubting is an hour you could have used to create freedom. You think the world's going to give it to you. You think they're going to knock on your door and say, hey, here's your time back. No chance. You have to take it. Let's be honest. The average person would rather stay broke than get uncomfortable. They'll complain about working a 9 to 5, but won't spend 2 hours a night learning how to escape it. They'll cry about having no freedom, but spend their evenings numbing themselves with Netflix and junk food. That's why the rich keep getting richer, not just because of money, but because of discipline, decisions, and direction. Freedom isn't some magical destination. It's a daily decision. You've got to take full responsibility for your time. That means cutting the crap out of your day. That means learning how to say no. That means building income streams that don't steal your hours, but give them back to you. Whether it's investing, online business, trading, content, coding, I don't care what path you take. I care that you realize you're in a cage and the key is in your hand. But here's the thing, freedom isn't free. It costs effort. It costs discomfort. It costs short-term sacrifice for long-term peace. People say, I don't have time to build a side hustle. You don't have time not to. Every day you stay stuck, you're paying with the one currency you can't earn back, your life. You get one shot at this, one life, one chance to own your mornings, to build your vision, to spend time with your loved ones while they're still around, to live on your terms, not your boss, not society's, yours. So if you're still out here thinking money isn't important, think again, because while you're romanticizing struggle, someone else is monetizing their freedom, and they're not better than you. They're not smarter. They just value time more. They understand that money buys space, time, energy, and choices. And poverty buys servitude. Poverty buys someone else's dream. So make a choice. Keep selling your hours to someone else, or start buying them back for yourself. That's the difference between freedom and slavery. Let me hit you with a brutal truth that most people run from. When you're broke, your choices are for sale. Your time's not your own. Your voice isn't yours. And your values, forget it. You'll sell them the second the pressure hits. That's what poverty does to you. It doesn't just starve your wallet. It starves your integrity. It makes you a puppet, desperate for approval, scared to speak up, afraid to take risks. You can't stand tall when you're down on your knees, begging to survive. And that's why poverty buys slavery. When you're poor, everything becomes a negotiation with desperation. You take jobs you hate. You nod your head to people you can't stand. You say yes when your soul is screaming no. Because you've got rent due, mouths to feed, bills piling up. I get it. I've been there. And when you're in that place, don't talk to me about morals or values, because those things start disappearing the moment hunger shows up. The world loves to talk about virtue, but try staying virtuous when your stomach is empty and your lights are about to get cut off. Let's see how loud your principles are then. Money gives you options. Poverty strips them away. That's why the poor are stuck in a constant state of compromise. You're constantly settling, constantly tolerating, constantly playing small just to make it to the end of the month. You're saying things like it's not that bad, or at least I have a job, or I'm doing my best. No, you're surviving, not living. And survival is a low bar to set for your life. People talk a big game when things are good, but strip away their income for 3 months and watch what happens. Watch the panic, the anxiety, the begging. Watch them backpedal on everything they once claimed to believe in. Suddenly they're working for someone they swore they'd never work for. Suddenly they're quiet about things they said they'd fight for. Suddenly they're taking whatever scraps they can get just to stay afloat. That's not freedom. That's modern slavery wrapped in a polite smile and a plastic ID badge. You want to know how strong your character really is? Look at the choices you make when money's tight. That's the real test, and most people fail it. Not because they're bad people, because poverty puts them in a chokehold. It makes them reactive, fearful, and weak. It tells them to be quiet, to obey, to stay small. Poverty is a prison, and the worst part is, you start decorating the walls like it's home. You convince yourself it's normal. That's the trick of the system. They want you comfortable being uncomfortable. They want you so used to compromise that you forget what it feels like to live on your own terms. You forget what it means to chase something bigger. You settle, you shrink, you justify. You think you're in control, but every decision you make is being dictated by your lack of money. That's not freedom. That's survival, dressed up to look like stability. Let's call it what it is, slavery. And here's where it really hits. When you don't have money, you can't walk away. That's the biggest loss. Someone disrespects you, you have to eat it. Job treats you like dirt. You suck it up. You know deep down you're worth more, but you can't risk losing the little you've got. That's what poverty does. It makes you swallow your pride, bend your spine, and silence your truth, just to keep the paycheck flowing. You don't speak your mind. You calculate what you can afford to say. You don't live your life. You live what your bank account allows. Compare that to someone who's free financially. They don't tolerate nonsense. They don't entertain disrespect. They walk away from people, jobs, contracts, entire situations, without blinking, because they're not operating from fear. They're not stuck. They're not trapped. They've built leverage, and leverage is power. When you've got money, you've got room to move. You've got room to breathe. You've got the ability to say no, without your world falling apart. And that right there is priceless. Now, I'm not saying money makes you a better person. I'm saying it gives you the space to be your best self, unapologetic. When you're not drowning in stress, when you're not in survival mode 24/7, you start thinking clearer. You stand taller. You stop tolerating low standards, because you know you've got options. You start living with intention, instead of fear. That's what it means to be free. So ask yourself, what are you tolerating right now that you wouldn't be if you had money? What relationships, jobs, routines are you stuck in because you can't afford to choose otherwise? That's the real cost of being broke. It's not just the empty wallet. It's the way your spirit gets drained, your confidence eroded, your potential locked in a cage you can't afford to break out of. And that's why I push so hard. That's why I tell you to stop being comfortable in your struggle. Because the longer you accept slavery, the more normal it becomes. You stop fighting. You stop dreaming. You forget that you were built for more. And I'm not here to let that happen. You have to decide. Are you going to live the rest of your life begging for, or are you going to get hungry enough to build a life where you don't have to compromise who you are just to survive? Because in this world, if you don't build your own freedom, someone will rent your soul for pennies, and they'll call it opportunity. You're either bought or you're choose. You want to know one of the sickest lies the system ever sold you? That your voice is free, that you can say what you want, be who you want, speak your truth. What they don't tell you is this: your voice isn't free if your pockets are empty. The broke man has no voice. None. And if he does speak, no one's listening. In fact, he's usually too scared to speak in the first place, because one wrong word could cost him everything. That's not freedom. That's quiet slavery. You think you're outspoken? Try saying what you really think when your boss controls your paycheck. Try standing up for yourself when one comment could get you fired, canceled, silenced. Most people don't speak truth. They speak survival. They filter everything through fear. Fear of losing their job. Fear of being judged. Fear of standing out. So they stay quiet. They nod. They play along. They become hollow versions of themselves, just trying to make it through the week without rocking the boat. And it's funny because you'll see these people online acting bold, posting quotes about bravery, pretending they've got courage. But in real life, they're scared to death, scared to speak up in a meeting, scared to stand up to authority, scared to defend what they believe. Because deep down, they know they're not free. They're owned, leased. Their words are rented by whoever signs the check. You see, when you're broke, you don't get to speak from your chest. You speak from your knees. You whisper what you're allowed to say. You avoid confrontation. You keep your head down. And the second you start talking real, someone reminds you who owns your time. The moment you step out of line, they pull the leash. That's what happens when you don't control the money. You can't control the message, but when you've got money, everything changes. Now, I'm not talking about millions in the bank. I'm talking about financial independence. Enough wealth that you don't rely on anyone to survive. You don't need to kiss up. You don't need to fake it. You don't need to watch every word like it's a landmine. When you're free financially, you speak with a different energy. You walk into a room and you say exactly what you mean, because you don't fear losing anything. You already own what matters: your time, your peace, your power. The world listens to money. You could say something genius, something profound, but if you're broke, they'll laugh at you. That same sentence, said by someone rich, becomes a revolutionary idea. That's the game. That's the ugly truth people don't want to admit. You think you're being judged on your intelligence, your insight, your character. No, you're being judged on your position in the hierarchy. And money is the loudest microphone there is. When you've got money, people shut up unless you walk different. You talk different. You don't need to ask permission to be heard. You don't need to water yourself down so people are comfortable. You get to be real. And when you're real, that's when influence happens. That's when leadership happens. That's when your voice actually matters. Not because you changed, but because now the world sees value behind your words. People think silence is humility. No, a lot of the time, silence is fear. It's the fear of backlash, the fear of judgment, the fear of loss. And money removes that fear. It gives you the ability to say what you truly feel, to draw lines in the sand, to take stands that matter. That's not arrogance. That's freedom. And that's why I say money protects your voice, because it puts you in a position where you no longer have to censor yourself to survive. Look around. The loudest voices, the most unfiltered opinions, the ones who say things you only dare to think. Those are the people who don't need anything from anyone. They're untouchable. And that's power. That's freedom. That's what you should be chasing. Not just money, but the ability to never again bite your tongue when something matters. Do you know how many people are sitting on world-changing ideas but too afraid to speak? Do you know how many people see what's wrong, feel what's wrong, but stay silent because they're scared of losing that paycheck, or that promotion, or that fragile image they've built? That's not living, that's a muzzle. And the worst part is, they put it on themselves. You can't serve truth if you're a slave to survival. You can't make impact if you're worried about rent. You can't live your purpose if you're begging for permission to exist. And all of that is tied to money. Not because money is the goal, but because it's the shield. It's the protection. It's the tool that allows you to unleash the real you without fear of being punished for it. So when I tell you to chase money, understand I'm not saying chase materialism. I'm saying chase voice, chase independence, chase the ability to speak your truth at full volume without trembling about what might happen. Because until you get there, your words aren't yours. They're shaped by fear. They're filtered by desperation. And deep down, you know it. So build like your voice depends on it. Because it does. Get out of survival mode so you can finally speak the truth that's been buried under the fear of not making it. Because once you're free to speak, to lead, to live unapologetically, that's when the world starts to change around you. Your voice becomes real. When your life is no longer up for sale. Let's talk about something most people never admit out loud. When you're broke, you don't own your body. That's a harsh thing to hear. I get it. But it's the truth. You don't wake up when you want. You don't eat what fuels you best. You don't train when your body is ready to grow. You don't sleep when you're tired. Every decision you make, even about your own body, is dictated by survival. And that right there is one of the ugliest parts of poverty. It steals your control, not just of your time, not just of your voice, but of your very physical existence. Think about how deep that goes. You've got one body, one engine. It's your vehicle through life. Everything you experience, your wins, your love, your purpose, your power, it all comes through this physical vessel. And yet most people have no control over there. They feed it garbage because it's cheap. They don't move it because they're exhausted. They wake up in pain, go to sleep stressed, and drag their body through life like it's a burden, instead of a weapon. You think that's freedom. You can't call yourself free if you don't even own your health. And you can't own your health when you're at the mercy of a system that has you chasing paychecks, skipping meals, gulping energy drinks at 2 a.m. just to get by. I've seen it first. The guy working double shifts with back pain and bad posture, too tired to hit the gym, too broke to fix his diet, too stressed to sleep deeply. That's not laziness. That's the weight of the system crushing him from the inside out. And the worst part, he's told it's normal. He's told that struggle is just part of life. But it's not. It's the symptom of slavery. When you don't control your income, you don't control your energy, you don't control your environment, you don't control your physical state. Every part of you is being spent just to keep your head above water. Now contrast that with someone who's financially free. They wake up when their body's ready, not when the alarm screams at them. They train when their energy is at its peak. They eat clean, high-quality food because they can afford to fuel themselves right. They move with power. They speak with breath control, presence, authority, because they're not rushing, not running on fumes, not being devoured by stress 24/7. That's a man who owns himself. I say it all the time. Your body is your first kingdom. If you can't control that, how are you going to control anything else? You're out here trying to build an empire when your foundation is falling apart. You're trying to win at life, but your knees are weak, your gut's inflamed, your back aches from hours in a chair, and your mind's foggy from cheap food and even cheaper sleep. That's not high performance. That's survival. And what causes that? Poverty. Plain and simple. You don't have time to train when you're working 3 jobs. You don't have the space to meditate when your house is chaos. You don't have the luxury to eat organic when your budget barely stretches past frozen dinner. Every part of your physical decay is tied to financial slavery, and they won't tell you that. They'll tell you to just be grateful or do what you can. But gratitude isn't a replacement for strength, and you can't do much when your tank is empty every single day. You see, when you're poor, your body is in a constant state of emergency. Your cortisol is through the roof. Your heart rate stays high. Your immune system weakens. You're always anxious, always behind, always one step away from breaking down. That's not living. That's being kept alive just enough to function like a cog in a machine. They don't want you strong. They want you functional. Big difference, because when you're strong physically, mentally, emotionally, you start asking questions. You start pushing. You start building your own path. But when you're weak, when you're tired and sore and broken, you obey, you follow, you stay in line. That's what the system wants. People too drained to fight back. But here's the power shift. Money changes that. It buys you space. Space to breathe. Space to train. Space to recover. It gives you the margin to treat your body like the weapon it's meant to be. You stop reacting and start rebuilding. You start optimizing. You get a coach. You hire a trainer. You fuel yourself like an athlete, because now you have the resources to play the long game. Now you're no longer in the cycle of decay. You're in a cycle of growth. That's how you separate from the herd. I train hard. I eat clean. I sleep deeply. Not just because I like it, but because I've earned the freedom to prioritize myself. And that's what people don't understand. Health isn't about willpower. It's about position. And until you put yourself in a position where you own your hours, your space, your fuel, you will always be fighting uphill. You'll always be a few steps away from a breakdown, and no one's coming to save you. So you need to build wealth, not for cars, not for watches, but for control over the one thing you truly own in this life, your body. Because the moment you can say, I train when I want, I eat what fuels me, I rest when I choose, you've escaped. You're no longer at the mercy of the system. You're no longer a slave. And once you have that control, your entire presence changes. You walk into a room and people feel it. They don't even know why, but they feel it.
Because strength isn't just physical, it radiates. And that kind of power only comes from a man who's in control of himself. Your body is not a tool for survival. It's your weapon for domination, but only if you reclaim.
Let me tell you something they'll never teach you in school, never show you on TV, never promote in the movies. They don't want you to know that money buys time, not just convenience, not just material things. I'm talking about literal time. The one resource that once it's spent, it's gone forever. And here's the reality. When you're broke, your time is not yours. You are renting it out by the hour. Every tick of the clock belongs to someone else. And that right there is slavery wearing a uniform and a polite smile. Time is the real currency, not dollars, not Bitcoin, time. But poor people spend their time like it's infinite, trading it for scraps, letting it be stolen without resistance. You're waking up before the sun, commuting through traffic, sitting under fluorescent lights for hours, all just to be given a number on a paycheck that barely covers your cost of existing. And when the weekend hits, you're too drained to even enjoy the free time you supposedly earn. So what do? Numb yourself with distractions, cheap dopamine, Netflix, junk food, anything to escape the loop. But Monday comes and you're right back in the cycle. You don't own your morning, you don't own your night, you don't own your afternoon. Everything is structured around your obligations. You are on someone else's schedule. That is not freedom. That is time slavery. And it's the most subtle, most accepted form of captivity there is. You're told that's just how life works. That's just being responsible. That's the grind. But who decided that? Who said that trading 5 days of your life for 2 days of recovery was the path to fulfillment? Who said it was noble to give the best years of your strength, your health, your energy to a job that would replace you in a week if you drop dead? You think that's honorable? That's delusion. And I get it. You've got bills, you've got mouths to feed, you've got responsibilities. That's real. But that doesn't mean you stay stuck. That doesn't mean you let your time be harvested forever. You have to build an escape. You have to build leverage. Because when you're rich, not just in money but in control, you buy back your time. You choose when to wake up. You choose who you speak to. You choose what to focus on. You spend your time building things that matter, training, learning, experiencing life deeply, instead of surviving it superficially. And suddenly life slows down. You start to feel every hour. You start to move with intention. You're no longer rushed. You're no longer reacting. You're designing your day, your week, your year. Do you know what that kind of power feels like? It's not just peace, it's presence. The ability to be fully here, fully alive, because you're not splitting your mind between a job you hate and a dream you bury. You're not calculating how long until your next break or your next check. You're living, actually living, and that's priceless. But most people never get there. Not because they're not smart enough, not because they're lazy, but because they never realized time is the real war. You're not fighting for success. You're fighting to own your minutes, your hours, your decades. Because when you're owned financially, your time is scheduled for you. You don't get to pursue your passions. You don't get to chase curiosity. You don't get to travel or grow or create. You get to work, you get to grind, and you get to rest just enough to keep going. Let me ask you something. How many people on this planet have genius inside them that will never be expressed because they spent their entire life working for rent? How many world-changing ideas, books, inventions, masterpieces were never born because the people who carried them never had the time to pursue them? That's the crime. That's the theft. That's what poverty steals from you. Not just comfort, not just opportunity, but potential. I'm not just talking about retiring early or taking vacations. I'm talking about ownership of your life. When your time is yours, your life is yours. You become dangerous. You become unpredictable. You're not chained to any system. You're not bribed by weekend getaways or bonus checks. You move how you want, when you want, and why you want. And people hate that. They fear it, because most of the world is time poor. So when they see someone who walks free, they feel threatened. They'll try to shame you, mock you, say you're lucky or selfish or arrogant. But deep down, they're just looking in a mirror they can't face. They're seeing what they gave up, what they accepted, what they were too scared to fight for. The truth is, you only get one shot at this life, and you're going to let someone else decide how you spend. You're going to look back decades from now, realizing most of your time was spent building someone else's dream, protecting someone else's legacy, climbing someone else's ladder. That's not a life. That's a sentence. So I don't chase money because I like stacking paper. I chase it because I want control of my hours. Because I know that the man who owns his time is the man who owns his destiny. Everything else, respect, power, peace, flows from that. You can keep trading your hours for comfort, for safety, for approval, or you can buy back your freedom one decision at a time. But don't lie to yourself and call it balance. Don't tell yourself you'll do it later. Later is a lie.
Later is how they steal from you without ever laying a hand on you. Every second that passes, ask yourself, who owns this moment? Is it you, or is it rented to someone else? Because the man who owns his time owns everything.